All right. So welcome everybody to today's session labeled Lean into Your Strengths. We're going to be talking about the Clifton Strengths Assessment, what it is, what some of your top 5 strengths are, and how you can best utilize those. I am very, very happy to have a guest with me today. I've got McLean Harris from TTI. McLean, if you would, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let our students know who you are.
Yeah, of course. Hello, everybody. My name is McLean Harris. I am a territory manager for a company called Tectronic Industries. Tectronic Industries, we like to say that we are the largest company that you probably never heard of. We're a tech company that we focus our tech and power tools. So you might have heard some of our other brands such as Milwaukee, Ryobi, Rigid, and now we have the Heart team. We just released our Heart team in Walmart's, and I'm happy to be here, happy to have you guys here, and we're ready to discuss how to lean into your strengths, which is something that I'm very, very passionate about. And so thank you for having me, and Angelica, you can take it away from here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us. We work with TTI a lot, and the team over there is fantastic. You're going to hear more about their leadership development program today, which is an awesome opportunity for people entering the workforce to really hit the ground running and start developing those leadership skills even further, and then build out your careers from there. So I'm Angelica Ramirez Blanks. I'm one of the assistant directors here at University Career Services, and I take all kinds of appointments. Some of you may have seen me already. Some of you, I hope I get to see soon. But we do all kinds of different services here at UCS, so we hope that you'll engage with us in today's workshop, as well as our other events, career fairs. Come on in for a resume review or a mock interview. We can talk about what your interests are and how to make sure that you're getting your needs met, as well as building a life that you're excited and passionate for. All right. So the basic premise of the Clifton Strengths is the idea that we all have a unique set of strengths, and some of us are just stronger in certain areas than others, and that doesn't mean that the areas that we're not super strong in are weaknesses, but that if we can really learn how to implement our strengths and use them, that we will be successful. We tend to do well at what we like, and we like what we do well in. So we want to try and find those opportunities where we can put our strengths to good use. This is a quote here from the founder of the Clifton Strengths, that individuals gain more when they build on their talents than when they make comparable efforts to improve their areas of weakness. Now, I think some of us, especially those of us who are perfectionists, can tend to be really hard on ourselves. We can focus on the areas where we aren't as strong and feel like we have to make those better. And while it is important to continue growing and developing, that doesn't mean that we should stop tending to the things that we're already good at. We need to lean into those and tend to those just as much, build mastery, and gain the confidence to continue to grow and do well. So I would love to hear from students. So we've got the ability to have comments in the chat, and you can submit questions through the Q&A. I would love to hear from some of you what your first reactions were to your reports. Some people feel like, yep, you hit it right on the nose, and others are like, this doesn't sound like me at all, and probably everywhere in between. So I'd love to hear from a few of you through the chat and the Q&A function what your thoughts were on your reports, what you felt really described you well, or maybe some surprises you had. And McLean, you actually took the assessment earlier today. What are your thoughts on this while people are submitting theirs?
Yeah, so I actually just took the test probably about an hour ago, and it definitely wasn't too surprising. I see Nick just said that he felt this report's very accurate. Definitely, it should feel like it's pretty accurate. I feel like if you really just answer it instinctively. Here at TTI, we've done a DISC profile, which is a lot like Clifton's 5 strengths. And a lot of the tendencies that I ended up with the Clifton's 5 strengths have ended up being very similar to the ones that I have on my DISC profile. I'm seeing other people say that yours are very accurate. But it's definitely a way to, sometimes when you're answering these questions, if you answer them instinctively, it's not always the way that you think about yourself. It's more of a result of how you process things and how the output is rather than what you're thinking on the inside. So that's why there's 177 different questions, I believe that's in there, is because there's a lot of different circumstances and there's a lot of different opportunity costs is what I look at it when you're looking at that Clifton's test. And for the most part, I would say that for me, it was 5 out of 5 accurate. I rode along right with it. And I was very excited to see that I guess I understand myself a lot better than I did maybe a year and a half ago.
That's great. So I love that you feel like it's accurate. It seems like our students are having a very similar reaction, that they felt that their reports were accurate as well. And even having some surprises. I love how, John, you put here that it's actually accurately portrayed who at least you think you are and strive to be. I have a feeling there that you're probably more in tune with your strengths than you know. It was, and I know when I took it, it was kind of surprising to me. My top strength was input, which has to do with how much information you like to get. I like to research a lot of things and ask a lot of opinions from people. And I didn't realize that that was going to be so high up, but it makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that so many people have had this experience with their Clifton strengths. Let's see here. I was honestly surprised to see what some of my strengths were. Thanks for sharing, Claire. Let's see, Megan said, it also made me feel better when some parts of my personality, which I sometimes worry are boring, it allowed me to see these are strengths, not weaknesses. Absolutely, Megan. I bet you're not boring at all. We all just have different areas of expertise. And it's great that you are able to express those things. And like McLean said, to answer those questions instinctively, so that you can just stay true to who you are. And even if you expected to see some different traits in your top 5, these things ebb and flow, they change. And we're excited to see where you all are now and how you can put that to good use. All right, so all of the strengths that exist, the 34 strengths, can be in one of 4 domains. So that's the executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. Now, the executing domain, that's how do I make things happen? And these are the strengths that you find within that domain. So those of us, now you may have had a strength inside of one or many of these domains. Chances are they're scattered between a few of them. But the executing domain, those are the doers. This is how I go about achieving tasks. McLean, I noticed when you were talking about your strengths earlier, you had quite a few in this area. How do you utilize those strengths?
Yeah, so for me, at TTI, my position is a territory manager. And before I was a territory manager, I was a field sales and marketing representative, which is essentially a sales rep or a brand ambassador. So I was explaining to Angelica that I, as a sales rep, took a personality test that was called a DISC profile that pointed a lot of things towards the executing side, which is, for me, on my end, it's a lot less of how it is how I make things happen, but it's not how it gets done. It's just a matter of if it does get done. that's at the end goal. As long as the job gets done, then it doesn't matter to me. I'm not a perfectionist. I don't have to cross all the T's, dot all the I's. As long as this project is done and we can use it, that's definitely one of my biggest strengths, is just getting to that finish line, and especially getting there first. That's what is the essential key for me. But then as I transition into a territory manager, as I manage a team of sales reps, it's turned in more into influencing my team to get the job done right, and maybe cross their T's and dot their I's a little more often than I would have as a sales rep. So it's definitely a change, which is nice. That made me retake the test and see where my strengths are going to point me in my position now, which is what we talked about before everybody kind of trickled in here. Me and Angelica talked about. This is definitely not going to describe you, who you are as a person for the rest of your life. It's something that it can be fluid. You get the 5 strengths. I would venture to say 3 or 4 of them will stay consistent. Maybe 1 or 2 of them will be fluid, depending on what classes you're taking this year or this semester, or if you're a freshman versus a senior, or if you are in an entry-level sales role like I was, as compared to being a year in and now managing a team of 10 sales reps. There's different times in your life where you're going to exercise different strengths, and you're going to look at these questions with a different point of view. So executing is definitely up there for me. If you are along these lines with any of the subcategories here, you and I definitely have very similar strengths to point towards.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that makes a whole lot of sense, that you started off really heavy on that execution piece as a sales rep or brand ambassador, but now that's kind of shifted a little bit. And that's a good segue into our next domain, which is influencing. It says, what is your effect on other people? You can think of this as your sort of interpersonal domain. And this, I know I myself had a couple of strengths in this area, and that helps me a lot in the work that I do. And McLean, I think you had a couple in this area too. How have you utilized this influencing now in your new role, these influencing strengths?
I use these on a daily basis for sure. I wanted to mention to everybody that I am working in a pretty large multi-billion-dollar corporation now as a business-minded professional, but I was not even a business major. So I was a social sciences major. I graduated from Florida State University, and I didn't have any business background. And I used these influencing skills that I took and pretty much got my job with these. One of the main ones is that bottom one, the woo. The woo is essentially being able to side with you, is being able to get somebody to side with you, to influence them, maybe persuade them to do something that they don't want to do. And I think that had a lot to do with my interviewing, as well as back to execution. What we do at TTI is a lot of retail work. We work in Home Depots, we work in Walmarts. We don't work for them, but we work as a partner with them. We create relationships, and then we partner with them to get what we want. And that woo factor is definitely something that we need to get into on a daily basis. Me as a manager, I'm working with market managers over at Walmart. So they cover 10, 11, 15 different stores, and they have their market. And what I do is go in there, and they have no idea who I am. I'm just some 24-year-old kid. And I go marching into their office and make them believe that we're selling the dream here at Heart, and we're going to be the #1 power tool sold in the world within the next 10 years. And that's why we should have our merchandise in the most prominent locations in Walmart, where the most customers walk by them and the most customers want to buy them. So the influencing factor is definitely one of the biggest parts of our role, because you have to influence, as a sales-minded individual, you have to influence people to do things that they may not want to do at the start of the conversation. But after having a long, drawn out, or even a short conversation with them, you'll be able to sway them one way or the other. And for us, it's actually a mutual benefit, because since we partner with Walmart and we partner with Home Depot, whatever makes us money is making them money. So once you get that message across to them, that influence, that woo factor is through the roof, and you can pretty much go into whatever store you want and do whatever you want, as long as it's making them money.
Yeah, I think that that's probably true. A lot of business models is that there is a mutually beneficial partnership occurring, and so people have strengths in this area do really well to be able to communicate the benefits to both parties and to get everyone kind of rallied around a particular goal or cause, when you want to think about kind of those social justice or nonprofit groups or things like that, or even in your case, around the goal of sales, because like you said, that's going to be mutually beneficial for you and the heart team as well as the retailers. So thank you for that. And also you touched on this a little bit too on relationship building. How do we make connections? So it's sort of taking this influencing, but to a different level. It's how not only do we create a relationship and a bond, how do we develop that, but also how do we maintain it, or do we want to maintain it, and on what conditions, how do we relate to others? So, and again, students, we definitely encourage you, for those of you who have taken the assessment, please do chime in as we talk about these domains. If there was something that you would like us to talk about, or if you have a specific question, feel free to post that in the chat. But I know I myself, most of my strengths lie in this particular domain, which makes a lot of sense. I'm coming from a counseling background, so relationships are kind of my gig. And I love having very authentic connections with people, finding out what matters to them. And in this position, I use that in making sure students take the things that they really love and manifest them into a life that they can build around that. And so I do that by gaining their trust and creating a lasting relationship where they can come into our offices and have a very honest conversation, because you all have to make really important decisions. What is your major? What are you going to spend your time and money on for the next at least 4 years, sometimes longer, or for you graduate students, that higher level of commitment to a particular field. So this piece is incredibly important as we're discussing strengths, and it can be used in so many different areas inside and out of your work and academics. Is there anything you wanted to touch on in this domain, McLean?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, if you were to ask me without me taking this test, if I was a relationship builder, I would say yes, 100%. I can build relationships. But then I take the Clifton 5 strengths and I don't have any of my top 5 on this list, which at first would be confusing to me. But then once you go through it, you deep dive it a little bit, my tendencies lean more towards the influence side. And maybe there's some things here. Positivity is one. Empathy is definitely something that I need to work on. But I've noticed the word get thrown around a couple times already. The word weaknesses. Here at TTI, we don't use the word weakness. We use the word opportunity. So when we do our interview process, when we give our feedback, if I give my sales reps feedback, we do what's called a 2x2. And we do, what are 2 of your strengths that you're doing well in this store? And what are 2 of your opportunities? We don't say, what are your 2 weaknesses? So those opportunities are opportunities for improvement. Because I wouldn't say that I have a weakness in relationship building. I would say it's an opportunity for an improvement. I could be a little more empathetic. Sometimes if that job doesn't get done, when you go back to the execution side of me and I'm a manager and that job's not getting done, sometimes I'm not understanding of why it's not getting done. I'm just like, hey, what's going on? Why isn't this up? Why isn't this going on? Like, why aren't we executing? And it's definitely a point. It's an opportunity for me to definitely better myself as a manager and as just as a leader in general. So I just wanted to touch on that. I don't want you guys to think of these, if you're not falling into the domain, don't think of it as a weakness. We've already said that, but think about it as an opportunity. We want to maximize our strengths and limit our opportunities is what we try to do here at TTI.
It makes a lot of sense. And I like that there's kind of some balance there of what am I doing well and what are some areas for growth and development. We're not a big fan of the W word here either. We think of it as an area for improvement or development. And also remembering that, yes, these are strengths, and they're sort of considered to be traits almost. You can think of them as like a aspect of your personality. But remember, most of these are actually skills, which means that they can be gained and bettered over time with practice. Nobody's good at everything right out of the gate. So the more that you put yourself out there in vulnerable positions to be able to practice these things, no matter whether it's a strength or an opportunity, then you'll have that opportunity to improve in that area and just sort of flex that muscle some more until it becomes potentially one of your top 5. All right, the last domain is strategic thinking. And this is a great domain to kind of think about how you process information. So you can see all of the strengths that lie in this domain, and think about the different ways that you just see things in the world. Do you kind of start to break things down into smaller pieces? Are you more of a big picture person where you see things from a higher level and you understand how they fit together? I myself wish I were higher up on a lot of these areas, or I just had this more strengths in this area. I definitely work on a lot of these. And I, in fact, revel in working with my teammates who have strengths in these areas, because it complements me and my strengths very well. They help me see things from a different perspective, or look at this information as a new opportunity to take advantage of a partnership, or to launch a new campaign on campus, or a new way to connect with students. So I know that in this particular domain where I don't maybe have as many strengths, I really look to my colleagues and the leadership around me to complement me with these areas. And it's really helped me raise my game. What about you, McLean? What's your experience with these strengths?
Absolutely echoing what you just said. This is something I would love to have more of my strengths on. I have to, these are opportunities for me head to toe from the top and bottom here. So the only line that I draw here is that working here at TTI, that's why we have different departments. We have a sales team, we have a management team, we have a marketing team, and we have an operations team. The strategic thinking side is probably going to lean on the operations side, maybe marketing. You have to have some strategic marketing, and management. You wear most hats as a manager for the most part, the higher up you get. But this is something where you just lean on your teammates, you lean on maybe a different manager that's on your team, or even your sales reps underneath you. Just because they aren't high on seniority with you or something along those lines doesn't mean they have the strategic thinking that can help the entire nation. That's what we have our leadership development program for. That's what we have. That's why what we do at TTI is we start everybody at the entry level position, which is in our retailers, because that's where the most strategic thinking happens. That's where the most strategic thinking happens. It comes from the ground up. You see real life experiences, you see real things happen, and you draw conclusions from there. Most of the people here in the corporation are sitting behind a computer, analyzing sales data and recognizing trends just based off of numbers. But you get to actually strategize with the behavioral aspect, and that's where you can get feedback from almost anybody that's out in the field, as compared to people on our operations side who have an abundance of information for you. It helps you execute on a daily basis. But sometimes that one hidden factor that's going to take us from we're shooting to be $1 billion company here at Team Heart this year, where it's our 3rd year of existence. And that one thing that one rep does over in Arizona tomorrow might be the factor that leads us to that goal. So it's definitely a team effort here. You need at least a full team of people in each one of these domains if you want to be successful. And if you think that you have everything in these domains, that's awesome. You're going to be a CEO one day, and congratulations to you.
That's so true. I love how you hit on that from so many different levels, and especially at these larger companies, which so many of our students go on to work with in a number of different fields, whether it's a more applied field like yours, or whether it's in finance or baking, or creative, or it's journalism or arts. You can apply that across the board. These strengths are utilized, and we need that diversity of strengths inside of our teams, and especially at different levels. Like you mentioned, at the entry level, there are your boots on the ground giving you that extra perspective. I know even in our office we have career peers and interns, and they give us a whole new perspective on students being students themselves, and just having a different kind of interaction with our audience. So we absolutely count on them and all of their strengths, which diversify and uplift our team and our efforts. Okay, so we've talked about the strengths. We know a little bit more about one another and what those strengths are, but now what do we do with that? Well, there's really not a place where you can't apply your strengths. These are just a few. Your resume, you can talk about your strengths in your resume descriptions, your position descriptions about what you've done in the past. You can apply them when you're doing class projects, either by yourself in terms of how you plan your work, or in a group when you're delegating tasks or deciding how to solve a problem. In your extracurricular activities, this is an area that I find a lot of students, you guys sell yourselves short. You do so much, lots of volunteering and work in Greek life or clubs, or special interest groups, or political activism. You're having an effect and you're utilizing your passions, but how are you using the things that you do best in those areas? And then translating that to your resume, because that's what employers want to see. Talking about these strengths in interviews, listing them in your LinkedIn profile, and then of course applying them on the job. So McLean, can you touch on a little bit of how you'd like to see students apply their strengths and what you've seen in your role recruiting?
Oh, yeah. So definitely LinkedIn is our #1 recruiting source. We are all over LinkedIn. I'm sure there's some people in this class who have gotten messages from TTI and somebody around the area who is looking for someone, an open to fill position for when you graduate in May. I can almost guarantee that you've been touched on. But LinkedIn profile, I would have all of your experiences and all of your skills listed on your LinkedIn profile. That's going to be the #1 thing. With the LinkedIn profile transitioning into the resume, I actually just did a resume workshop on University of Tennessee's campus. And what I like to tell people is to be as descriptive as possible with your experiences behind the strengths that you list, but also be vague enough where you can talk about it in an interview as well. Because if you list everything out in your resume, then what's the employer going to ask you when you get in a room for an interview? It's pretty tough. And then that's when you start getting real sideways questions. You get real out of the box questions that you're not prepared for in an interview. So when it comes to the resume, I like to be as vague as possible while still sparking interest. Because at that point, when you're creating your resume and you have these class projects and these extracurricular activities that you've been a leader, you've been a part of, you've been outgoing, you've been you were the strategy behind the class project, right? You don't want to type out a full paragraph on your resume and explain how you did that. You can say, I was the leader in this class project and we got an A. And then in the interview, the interviewer is going to say, oh, so how are you a leader in that? And then you already know the answer. And it helps you guide the interview rather than the interviewer guide it. And it's definitely a little hack that I try to tell people all the time, because it helps you guide the interview. And it's like getting the answers to the test. It's like having a final next week and you have the answers to the test, but then you tell the teacher that you have the answers to the test. So then they switch it at the last minute. So definitely everywhere, exercise these as often as possible, take leadership roles in every possible corner of your life right now, extracurricular activities, job internships, try to be the number one person that is leading and creating a wave that is going to disrupt whatever is going on. You don't want to be someone who's just part of the crowd.
Yeah, definitely. And I know here at UCS, we try to encourage students to really focus on the quality of their time and commitments over the quantity. So it's great if you are a member of 10 different campus clubs and maybe you go to a lot of meetings or functions, but what effect are you having in that space? How do we know you were there? What was your mark? I want to know how you influenced that organization. And when we talk about resumes and strengths, we talk about, a lot of times students sometimes are a little too vague. We want them to be more specific because sometimes if you're too vague, then I don't actually know what you did. And then also punching up sometimes a vague sentence with something very specific or concrete is a great way of kind of finding that middle ground. Like McLean mentioned, I led a class project and we got an A. That's something that's very concrete and measurable. And I know that you're exhibiting excellence in a group there. So those are some tips and tricks that you can use in applying these strengths to what you're doing in and outside of the classroom.
At TTI, we have a saying that we live and breathe by. It's impact over activity. You can have a million different activities on your resume, but what kind of impact did you make when you were doing those activities? It's the same kind of thing with our workforce. You can do a million things throughout the day, but if you're not impacting our sales numbers, if you're not impacting the store that you're working in, then what was the point in all of it? So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it's about finding that middle ground between, these measurables, these data points that you can point to where like maybe you received an award or you were the best fundraiser for a cause that you care about. Yes, those are things that are data, hard data that you can prove, but it's also about showing some of those softer skills. Well, if you were the best fundraiser, then you're really good at rallying people around a cause, around convincing them to turn that into an action, to care about what you care about. You're probably a very persuasive person. I mean, all of these things are communicated through a very short bullet point. So think about that, about your strengths, and connecting it to these examples, these narratives that you can touch on throughout your whole experience and translate that to your resume, to your jobs, to your internships, even to just some of your personal relationships and friendships. You can find ways to leverage these strengths. So that's why I put here, use it or there's no point to it. All right, so here I've got some kind of targeted questions for you, McLean, and we've talked a little bit about these. But that first one I think is a really important question. And again, to everybody in attendance, if you have any questions that are not here or that you would like, even if it's kind of more individualized or pointed based on your strengths, please do submit them. And my lovely co-host Roderick has put in our survey link. If you all could take a look at that and complete it at the end of the workshop, we really appreciate it. We do sincerely look at those metrics and use them to craft these offerings and ensure you're all getting your needs met. But back to our questions here. So this first one has to do with self-awareness. By taking a lot of these assessments, that helps us look at ourselves through a different lens and see if we recognize the results that come back. So for you, McLean, what is the benefit of self-awareness and leaning into those strengths for early career employees?
I think the benefit is that that's going to point you into a career that you are going to want to do. if you are maximizing your strengths. I actually have the book pulled up on my phone. I don't know if anybody's read it or if you guys have talked about it in your class or anything, but it's a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. It's an entire book based off of maximizing your strengths and choosing a career path based on what you're good at, not what you like to do. And it does incorporate the fact that, you usually like what you're good at, like we talked about before in the presentation. That's usually what falls in line, but it's really leaning into what you're good at as what we're talking about. And that's going to provide you with that happiness when you go to work every day, to actually care about what you're doing and have a passion for what you're doing, rather than going to work just to collect a paycheck. Because money's a motivator, but it's a means to an end. I mean, I love what I do here at TTI. I love talking to people on a daily basis. It's what I do. I would say it's definitely all 5 of my strengths lead to talking to people. So that's why I'm still here at TTI. That's why I didn't quit after being a year in as a sales rep. That's why I'm still here trying to coach and motivate my employees and my counterparts to strive and become better at whatever their strengths are. It's my job as a manager and it's my job as a coach to leverage those for them to help them grow as a person. And once you're there, you never reach full potential really with it. It's going to be a long way down the line, but when you see those strides of improvement just over a couple of weeks, then it really starts to hit home and you really start to enjoy maximizing these strengths. And if you can find a career path that really maximizes these self-awareness and leaning into these strengths, then you'll never work a day in your life because you're doing something you love.
That's so true. And, we oftentimes there's this belief that you need to find a specific career path, or like when you pick your major that you have to stick to it, or that you have to pick an industry and stick to it, or just like that's an interest that you have and that has to be your work. And that doesn't have to be the case at all.
I went finance, economics, public administration, urban regional development.
Whoa, that's a lot of majors.
I changed my major 4 times, and I found something that I love to do, and I'm trying to maximize it now. So I can definitely second that.
Yeah, and that sounds like a lot of major changes, but I believe that's actually the national average. Last time I looked was 4. So if any of you out there have changed your major a couple times, you are in good company. I myself changed mine 3 times. I think I went from liberal arts to business, which I never should have done, eventually to psychology, and that's what I did my graduate studies in. And I know Roderick here went to school for engineering. We all find ourselves in different areas and we do the best with what we have. And when we take the time to really reflect on what we do well and what makes us excited, what continues to motivate us, when we really take the time to zero in on that, and as we say in this workshop, lean into it, we start to find our areas of purpose where we can have that maximum impact, and we can really feel like we are a meaningful part of the puzzle that's at work here. So yeah, I would totally agree with your response there. So for our students here that have all taken the Clifton Strengths, how would you recommend most directly applying their results?
I would start right now with any sort of extracurricular, if you have a part-time job while you're at school or even a full-time job, just utilize those strengths, consciously utilize those strengths on a daily basis, and have an anecdote for it when it comes to applying it to the workforce. Because there's a lot of people out there who have significant strengths, who are really good at something, but you just don't know what it is maybe, or you don't know how to apply it at the time. And it's something that's difficult to do. It's not something that comes easily. You have to consciously think about it on a daily basis. And when you're working in these group projects in class, or if you're part of Greek life, if you're part of your part-time job, standing out as a leader, or maybe if your strengths are the strategic planning, maybe come up with a new, or at least pitch ideas to new ways to train new employees at the part-time job, or pitch a different idea than everybody's going with in your group project. Even if they say no, it's giving you practice at these strengths and you're trying to utilize them as much as possible, which is just polishing and sharpening the knife. So I would just say consciously think about it in every aspect of your life, whether you're at home talking to your roommates or ordering a pizza on the phone with somebody. If you can just try to maximize the output that you get from your strengths, then they're only going to get better. So that's the number one tip that I would say.
Definitely. I love your point about being conscious. We talk in our office a lot about intentionality and being very purposeful with your efforts. You know, our students are incredible. They really have so many varied interests and they want to be so many things in so many places. And so it's difficult for a lot of them to choose where they want to exercise their strengths. But as you've mentioned, being very purposeful, picking out those areas where they can truly shine in their own individual ways, and just flexing those muscles. Like these strengths are muscles, they are skills. They can be honed, and those, you know, like he said, those knives can be sharpened. And if you're struggling in a certain area, the only way to get better is to continue to get at it. So I really appreciate that perspective on how to apply your strength to do it regularly and intentionally. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. I'm curious, McLean, from your perspective, since you see so many new professionals who are coming out of school, are there any glaring gaps that you often see as candidates are making that transition from the university to the workforce? And how do you think that students can kind of use their strengths to help them navigate those gaps?
Yeah, so it kind of relates back to my answer that I just said a little bit. When it comes to, obviously, I don't know how many people are already out searching for jobs and everything, but the number one thing that you're looking for when you're graduating college, the number one hurdle as a student is every single company's 3 to 5 years experience, right? Well, how am I supposed to have 3 to 5 years experience if I'm just now graduating college? So that leans back into applying your strengths on a daily basis and consciously using them, because a lot of times you get into interviews or you put on your resume, hey, I'm good at communication. Okay, well, tell me about a time where you communicated effectively. And sometimes you draw a blank. You're like, oh, I mean, I talk to people every day. I communicate with my classmates every day. I talk to my friends. We all made it down to the library to study for this test all at the same time. Like, that was good communication, right? Like, I mean, it's better to practice this on a daily basis, because that's where you're going to get your experience from if you don't have an internship or you don't have anything of that heavyweight experience behind it. So then you can point to an anecdote when you're talking or in an interview where you can say, hey, all of my friends had a busy schedule and we wanted to study for this group project, or we wanted to work on this group project, and we all had to, it had to be done by 6. Our class was at 6:30, and I ended up taking the lead on the team and scheduled a study room in the library from 4 to 4:45 so we could get this done, and we knocked it out. We ended up getting a 92 on it. Boom. Then you have an anecdote. You have an example of when you use whatever strength, your communication strength, or if it's your strategic planning strength. I remember in my interview, I used to work for UPS before I was working for TTI. And the reason I used the training at the employers is because that was one of my anecdotes. I actually reframed the training process of our package handlers at UPS. And that was an anecdote that I could point at and have substance behind it. So the biggest things is getting involved, having some sort of experience, and having examples. That's the biggest gap, whereas you think you have great communication skills. You think you're sufficient at Microsoft Excel. Okay, tell me a time where you really were a lot better than someone else at Microsoft Excel. Like, oh, I froze a couple panes and I found this one piece of data real fast. Like, I mean, that sounds good and everything, but we need to be able to point at something directly that where you can show that you maximize these strengths. So it kind of ties back into the last answer, but it's using them on a daily basis so you can have valid, hard evidence of how you are really using these on a daily basis and using them no matter what circumstance you're in.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you, I like how you touched on the fact that sometimes we do have these hard examples, like from a past job or internship. But if you're, let's just say, a first or second year student who has yet to have those experiences, that doesn't mean that your resume has to be blank. Experience is value. No matter what that experience is, we can work with you to find out what you glean from all the experiences you've had just by living your life. So definitely recommend that if you're not quite sure how to connect these pieces, like McLean touched on, how to find those examples, make an appointment, come on in for some career coaching. We'll talk to you and find those pieces. We'll mine for them together. And also, if for those of you who are preparing for interviews, whether they be for internships or jobs, if you're a little nervous about how to make these connections or how to not be repetitive of what's on your resume in the interview, we have mock interview appointments. That's what these are for. We also have Big Interview on our resource page, which is a great tool where you can record your responses and then view them back. To see not just the quality of your responses, but maybe you touch your face a lot, or there's a weird thing in your background, all of these things to kind of help you feel more secure and prepared as you head into these important opportunities. So the last question I have here for you, McLean, before we depart is, I know that TTI has a leadership development program. So how do these candidates stand out from their competition? What makes someone a great leader in the eyes of TTI and probably other employers as well?
That's a tough one, but for the most part, when I look at resumes and I'm doing my interviews, a lot of people think they're leaders or they held a leadership position, which makes them a leader. And that's not necessarily the case every time. So if you were a captain on the baseball team, or if you were the president of your sorority, or so awesome, you held a leadership position, but what did you do with it is where you can stand out from your competition. It's more about how you impacted others than how you impacted yourself. And in the interview process, you always want to relate it to yourself at the end. You want to tie it back into yourself. I mean, most leaders are about growing people around them. So just because you have the title of a leader doesn't make you a leader. It's about your experience of what you did to help others around you, and then how that helped you grow as a person. And it's really being able to articulate that the proper way, as compared to other people who think that they can just bank on being like, so I was the captain of the academic bowl team and we went to nationals and we came in third place, but I was the best performer and that's why I was captain. Like, okay, so you were the smartest person on the team, congratulations, but what did you do to help everybody else? Right? Like, how are you a leader? How did you lead your team there? Did you just do it all yourself? Because that's not always the best leader. That's not always, if you want to run a business one day and you want to be a leader, you're not going to be able to run the whole business by yourself. You can't just sit there and put all the weight on your back all day, every day. You'll never, the business will never grow. So you have to be able to showcase growth and leadership to other people around you, and as well as growing yourself at the same time. And that's what'll make you stand out between you and the captain of the swim team.
I couldn't have said that any better myself. That's the most perfect response I think I could have ever hoped for. But yes, I think the theme that I have seen across our discussion here today is about the action. It's about taking these results that you all have gotten from your assessments and putting them to action intentionally every day, making the decision to say, I am a great communicator, or I am an activator. And today I'm going to activate somebody in my life in a certain way. And I'm going to do it by this. In this way, I'm gonna call, my sibling or my friend who I know is struggling, and I'm going to make their day better because that's something I know how to do. And not everybody can. Not everyone can do that. So really finding these strengths, feeling empowered in them, and taking them to the next level, impacting those changes. So I hope that everybody learned a lot today. I know I did. I am so grateful to you, McLean, for joining us, and would love to work with you again. I featured TTI's link to their leadership development in the slides earlier. And oh, thank you so much. McLean's also put his email in the chat to everybody. So if you are interested in learning more, please contact him. For those of you who have not yet come into UCS for an appointment, whether it's a mock interview, a resume review, talking about your major or career opportunities, please, I highly encourage you to do that. You can do it through Handshake. That's an amazing tool that UNC has. So please take advantage. And we have put the survey link and QR code here, as well as in the chat, as Roderick did earlier. Please do go ahead and fill out that survey. It really is helpful for us to know what we're doing well and what the opportunities to improve are. So
There we go.
that's right. We're going to use some TTI language from now on. I love that 2x2 model. We might implement that here. But thank you so much to everybody for coming. And I hope that you all learned a lot through your assessments and then again by attending today. And we hope to see you in the UCS office and around campus. So if everybody else will please thank McLean for joining us. If there's any parting words you have, McLean, otherwise we will sign off.
I just want to say thank you for having me. I know I was a fill-in for Amanda and everything, and I appreciate you working with TTI and working with me today. And I appreciate all three of you, Angelica, Roderick, Stephanie. Thank you for having me, and everybody who decided to join today. I appreciate your efforts, and keep killing it out there. Utilize these strengths and become the best leader possible, and you guys are going to be up to great things.
Thanks so much. Everybody have a great afternoon, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.